This is Faculty Focus from Fairleigh Dickinson University. In this episode, we feature Dr. David M. Rosen, professor of anthropology and law in the Department of Social Sciences and History. Dr. Rosen has done extensive research in Africa, Israel, and Palestine. In this segment, we discuss the problem of the child soldier.
One image really is of the innocent and vulnerable child, the child who's a victim of war, and that's probably the most dominant image. But the other image, oftentimes in journalistic accounts, is of the child as a vicious killer, a kind of a Lord of the Flies type of depiction of an evil child doing terrible things. In some cases, it's really done through propaganda and ideology and appealing to children's ideas that maybe they can actually create a better life and a better society. Certainly that was the case in Nepal and even amongst the Naxalites, that they appeal to children saying, look, what's your situation today? What is the situation of your society today? You're living in terrible poverty. No one's helping you. Come and join us, join our movement, and life will be better. So in some sense, it really is ideology and propaganda. But in other instances, it actually is forced recruitment. So for example, in the case of Sierra Leone, the country that I'm most familiar with, there certainly children were kidnapped, children were abused, children were threatened with death. Some children were forced to take drugs of various kinds as well. Sometimes they were required to do terrible acts in the towns that they came from, so that people would be alienated from them. One well-known case is the case of Burma, for example, where it's really widely believed, and in fact widely known, that the government impresses very, very large numbers of young children into the army. But other places which are well known for child soldiers are in Uganda, for example, the Lord's Resistance Army, the civil war in Sierra Leone. There's also currently a conflict in the Congo involving many, many different factions, and there are also sort of fairly large numbers of child soldiers that are involved in that conflict as well. So those are the main areas, although in many areas where there are also rebel movements of various kinds, there are also significant numbers of children involved in those rebel movements. For example, let's say the so-called Naxalites, or the Maoist rebels in India, also recruit a fair number of children, as did, in fact, the Maoist armies in Nepal. They also, in fact, recruited a fair number of children. This is not new. I mean, a lot of people try to think it's new, that sometimes they think it's related to Africa or to South America. But you could say the people who do it historically have been people like the Americans. I mean, let's remember that Andrew Jackson, I think the 7th president of the United States, joined the forces of the revolution at age 13, and there were probably hundreds, if not thousands, of youngsters that went into revolutionary combat at the time. And the same thing was the case in the Civil War, where there were thousands and thousands of youngsters. Now, since the 19th century, or maybe let's say since World War II, in the West, we've generally tended not to want to have younger children serve in the military. But historically, before that, it was a very, very mixed situation. Well, on the legal side, there is new international law. The International Criminal Court and the statutes which are associated with that criminal court have made the recruitment of child soldiers below the age of 15 an international war crime. So that means anybody recruiting those soldiers could be subject to fairly severe criminal penalties. On the human rights side, or the children's rights side as well, there is increasing pressure on countries not to recruit children who are below age 18. Right now, it's still only a criminal offense to recruit younger children. And then the United Nations plays an important role in trying to convince leaders, especially leaders of rebel groups, that this is really a wrong which needs to be corrected.